Okay, in this instructional video, what we're going to do is look more at the criteria we use for queries. And I'm going to demonstrate some things, and I'm going to use a totally different table this time. I'm going to use the service events table. And let's take a look at that. What you'll see in here, I have actually added some events to it. And what I put in here are more events for the American Cancer Society. And what I've done, I put some historical events. So you can see that they have an event in May of every year that we have helped out with. And it's going back to 2010. So there's been an event every year. And by the way, while I'm on this screen, I want to point out something. Right now, you cannot see all the columns. If we go over here, you're missing part of that last column. There's a couple ways we could see more of that table. One of the easiest ways is just highlight this and move it. So you put your cursor on it so it becomes a double-ended arrow that way, and then just move it over. We could also, of course, change the columns by putting the cursor right there where the column is divided and then move it that way. That's another way to do it. Of course, you want to see the data, so I'm going to expand that back out. And now we're seeing all the columns. So we're going to demonstrate some things using criteria with this table. You'll recall that in the last video, we used criteria against the name field. So that name field is a text field. But in this module, we're going to focus on using criteria against numeric type fields. And the numeric type fields, besides the field that's called number, and in fact, let's look at service events. If we go here and look at design view, so number is a numeric field, but also currency. Currency is a type of numeric field, and actually even date time is a type of numeric field. And I won't spend a lot of time talking about this, but date time is actually stored as a number. You just don't see it that way. So we're going to build some queries using criteria against all three of these: number, currency, and date time. So let's close out the service events table. And by the way, I did change the layout a little bit, and the layout just means the column width in this case. So I'm going to say yes. I'm going to save that. And let's create query, going to query design. I'm going to use service events, close it. And let's say I want to see all the fields on this table. I could, of course, just click and drag each field down or double click. But an easy way to do that, if you'll notice the very top thing there is an asterisk, a star. And what that does is just allow me to see and select all the fields. So if I bring that down like that and just click run with that one item in there with the asterisk, that means I'm getting all the fields. So that's a quick and easy way to do that and get all the fields. Let's go back to design, and let's create some criteria against some numeric fields. So let's look at funds raised. So I can just double click it and bring it down. And let's say I want to look at any event we've ever had where we have raised more than $1,000. So I can go down here and under criteria, just put greater than, the greater than sign, and then $1,000. And just run it. In this case, you don't need any kind of $ symbol. It really just stores a number. So what you need is the number, and I run it. And with the results that I get here, a couple things you'll notice. Let me expand that. And it doesn't we have to expand this to see the word funds raised. And another funny thing about this, it's actually got another field here that says field 0 with the same data, 1,400. We've got one record out there that has more than $1,000, and it's pulled that record. But like I said, it's done some funny things with the columns here. And let me go back and show you with the query why it's doing that. If I go to Design View, the display there was a little confusing, and it did this funds raised column twice, simply because funds raised is part of getting all the fields where it says asterisk, and then it's also displaying it here where I added it again with the criteria. Let me change that and get rid of that box, that check mark for show. And that's what the show thing means here. It's actually going to show that field. And in this case, I don't need to because it's part of this column where I'm showing all the fields already. So if I run it again, that looks much better. It's only got the funds raised column once with the one row where it's more than $1,000. There's other things we can do with criteria and numerics. Let's go back to design. I could actually say greater than or equal $1,000. And when I run that, you'll notice I still only get the one record. I have no records that are greater than or equal 1,000. But let's change it. Let's say greater than or equal 900. And run it. And you notice I get anything 900 and above. And some more things you can do with queries. Let's go back to Design View. I could actually add more to this query. Right in the criteria selection area there. I could say, for instance, let's say greater than 800 and less than 1,000, like that. If I run that, and that's what I'm getting. So I've got two records in there, greater than 800 and less than 1,000. Let's go back. And another thing I can do is have criteria on more than one field. So here I've got a couple different criteria, but they're on the same field. I could do something, let's say I want to know funds raised greater than 1,000, and I want to know also number of volunteers greater than 10. So both of these conditions have to be true, where funds raised is greater than 1,000 and the number of volunteers greater than 10. Let's see what I get. And I only get one row where there's 50, and again, the column is confusing. Let's go back because I need to not show that field. Let's do that and it'll make it clear. Yeah, number of volunteers 15 and funds raised greater than 1,400. Let's go back to this. Let's say number of volunteers greater than 20 and funds raised greater than 1,000. And you notice I get no records. Don't be confused by that. It's showing a new row, but really what it's saying, there are no records that meet those two criteria. So a few more things I want to show with numeric criteria. Let's go back. Let's get rid of that column. What if I actually put in the $sign here? Just want to show you. What it did, when I tab off of it, you'll see it put quotes around it, which makes it look like a text field, like when we did and we looked for the name Smith or like Smith. And if I try and run that, it actually tells me it's a data type mismatch. It says I've got quotes around that like it's a text field, but that's not a text field, it's numeric. So I'm going to fix that. And then let's get rid of that column by doing that. And let's run a criteria with event date. So I'm going to double click on event date. Let's assume what our user of the database wants is to see any event that occurred prior to January 1st of 2013. And what I can do with criteria is, again, use the greater than or less than symbol, and I would say event date less than 1/1/2013. And when I tab off of it, what you'll notice, it put in these pound signs here. And that's the way that Microsoft Access indicates a date, with the pound signs. And if I run that, you'll see what I got here are events prior to 2013. And I should get rid of that show, run it, and then the column heading looks correct. And by the way, with criteria, something to be aware of, I really didn't talk about this, but you don't have to have less than or equal than. You can have a criteria that where you're looking for a specific date. So just putting in a date by itself, let's say I know there's one out there, or I think there's one out there that's 10/24 of 15. And I tab off of it. And so again, it put the pound sign symbols in, and I'm looking for a specific event that's October 24th of 2015, and I run it, and that's exactly what I get. So obviously, in the criteria here, you can look for a specific thing, a specific text field, like a name. You can look for a number. You can look for a date, etc., just like that. So those are examples of how you would use criteria with numbers. In the assignment, you're going to be expected to create a query like that and save it in your database and submit it to me. And you'll see all of that when you get to the actual assignment.